All right, guys. Uh, Welcome back to part four of reading this book by Ernest. We'll be technically proceeding where we actually ended, but I want to make this point clear. I figured out that most people we are very um feeling that we're not there, and we get so disappointed that whatever things that we're doing, we're not actually seeing the ideal picture of ourselves succeed. You know what I'm saying? But this is just a word that I felt like speaking it before I start reading this book, that always trust the process. Always trust the process. The process never looks like the ideal success. Trust me. The process never looks at it. And it might further be way opposite to it. You might be seeing chaos that is happening. But actually, that's actually the process. It's always like pain is the only thing that makes you become better, and when you become better, that means technically you have become successful. So it's simply like that. Just if you're simply obsessed with self improvement right now and you don't feel yourself like you're actually there, just trust the process. Just trust it. Trust it. Though it doesn't look like it, just trust it. Right. So um, let's start. Well, um, I was in page. Wait, it's a glitch. Okay, so page 47. We were here. Okay, page 46. From the title that reads, "Rich people acquire assets, the poor and the middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets." For those who guys who don't know assets and liabilities, liabilities are actually stuff like loans, stuff which aren't actually yours. You have to return them. You know what I'm saying? But asset are the stuff which, when you get them, they're actually yours already. So liabilities is pretty much like debts. That's it. So rule number one, you must know the difference between an asset and the liabilities and buy assets. If you want to be rich, this is all you need to know. It is rule number one. It is the only rule. This may sound absurdly simple, but most people have no idea how profound this rule is. Most people struggle financially because they do not know the difference between an asset and liability. Rich people acquire assets. The poor and the middle class acquire liabilities that they think are actually assets, said Rich Dad. When Rich Dad explained this to me, to Mike and me, we thought he was kidding. Here we were nearly teenagers waiting for the secret to getting rich, and this was his answer. It was so simple that we stopped for a long time to think about it. "What is an asset?" said Mike. "Don't worry right now," said Rich Dad. "Just let the idea sink in. If you can comprehend the simplicity, your life will have a plan and be financially easy. It is simple. That is why the idea is missed." Alright? Nice. That's a bar, man. That means when the idea is so simple, that's what people usually miss. Mm, that's so tricky. You mean all we need to know is what an asset is, acquire them, and we'll be rich? I asked. Rich Dad nodded his head. It's that simple. If it's that simple, how come everyone is not rich? I asked. Rich Dad smiled. Because people do not know the difference between an asset and a liability. I remember asking, "So, How could adults be misguided? How could adults be misguided? If it is that simple, if it is that important, why would everyone not want to find out? It took Rich Dad only a few minutes to explain what assets and liabilities were. As an adult, I have difficulty explaining it to other adults. The simplicity of the idea escapes them because they have been educated differently. They were taught by the other educated professionals such as bankers, accountants, real estate agents, financial planners, and so forth. The difficulty comes in asking adults to unlearn and become children again. Mhm. An intelligent adult often feels it is demeaning to pay attention to simplistic definitions. Rich Dad believed in the KISS principle. Uh, keep it simple, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it super simple. Okay, so he kept it simple for us, and that made our financial foundation strong, right? So, what causes the confusion? How could something so simple be screwed up? Why would someone buy an asset that was really a liability? The answer is found in the basic education. We focus on the word literacy and not financial literacy. What defines something to be an asset or liability are not words. In fact, if you really want to be confused, look up the word asset and liability in the dictionary. I know the definition may sound good to a trained accountant, but the average person it makes no sense. But we adults are often too proud to admit that something does not make sense. An asset puts money in my pocket, liability takes money out of my pocket. So us young boys, Rich Dad said, what defines an asset are not words, but numbers. And if you can't read the numbers, you can't tell an asset from a hole in the ground. In accounting, Rich Dad would say, if it's not the numbers, but the numbers are but what the numbers are telling you. It's just like words. It's not the words, but the story the words are telling you. If you want to be rich, you've got to read and understand numbers. If I heard that once, I heard it 1,000 times from my rich dad, and I also heard the rich dad acquire assets, and the poor and the middle class acquire liabilities. I'll read this once again. If you want to be rich, you've got to read and understand numbers. If I heard that once, I heard it 1,000 times from my rich dad. And I also heard the rich acquire assets and the poor and the middle class acquire liabilities. Here's how to tell the difference between an asset and liability. Most accountants and financial professionals do not agree with the definitions, but these simple drawings were the start of strong financial foundation for two young boys. This is the cash flow pattern of an asset. Uh, okay, so they have drawn these stuff here. I can see income statements, income, expenses, balance sheet, assets. So it shows that assets go to income. That's the only indication. The top part of the diagram is an income statement, often called the profit and loss statement. It measures income and expenses, money in and money out. The lower part of the diagram is a balance sheet. It is called that because it's supposed to balance assets against liabilities. Many financial novices do not know the relationship between the income statement and the balance sheet, and it is vital to understand that that relationship. So, as I said earlier, my rich dad simply told two young boys that assets put money in your pocket, nice, simple, and usable. This is the cash flow pattern of a liability. Alright, so liabilities goes to expenses and then it gets out like, alright, now now that assets and liabilities have been defined through pictures, it may be easier to understand my definition in words. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. This is really all you need to know. If you want to be rich, simply spend your life buying assets. If you want to be poor or middle class, spend your life buying liabilities. Oh, thank you, thank you. I have to take this one. Personal advice, I got it. Illiteracy, both in words and numbers, is the foundation of financial struggle. If people are having difficulties financially, there is something that they don't understand, either in words or numbers. The rich are rich because they are more literate in different areas than people who struggle financially. So if you want to be rich and maintain your wealth, it's important to be financial literate in words as well as numbers. The arrows in the diagrams represent the flow of cash or cash flow. Numbers alone mean little, just as words out of the context mean little. It's the story that counts. In financial reporting, reading numbers is looking for the plot. The story of where the cash is flowing is 80. Wait, what? I lost my mind. Arrows in the diagram represent the flow of cash or cash flow. Numbers alone mean little, just as words out of the context mean little. Oh, okay. It's the story that counts, not numbers. In financial reporting, reading numbers is looking for the plot, the story of where the cash is flowing. In 80% of most families, the financial story paints a picture of hard work to get ahead. However, this effort is for naught because they spend their lives buying liabilities instead of assets. This is the cash flow pattern. So the job gives income, right? And then the income goes to the expenses. Expenses then draw out all the money, right? This is the cash flow pattern of person in middle class, right? This is the cash flow of a rich person. A job goes to the income, income goes to the liabilities. Um, mon Also before it goes to the expenses, it goes to the liabilities. For example, school loans, credit card debits, car loans, and mortgage. So this is the cash flow of a rich person. I still don't understand. And also, he showed that assets, they go to the income. We see that there is real estate, stocks, bonds, notes, intellectual property. They all go to the income. Rental income, dividend, interest, loyalties. Taxes, um, okay. All of these diagrams are obviously oversimplified. Everyone has living expenses. They need for food, shelter, and clothing. The diagrams show the diagrams show the flow of cash through a poor, middle class, and a wealthy person's life. It is the cash flow that tells the story of how a person handles their money. Wait, I think I missed out something. Oh, okay. You see the first diagram. This, the title is up here. This is the cash flow pattern of a poor person. You see that the money comes from the job, goes to salary, then expenses. No assets or liabilities. This person's means of living is only survival. That's all. The next one, this is the cash flow pattern of a person in middle class. So you can determine yourself where you come from. This guy comes from the job, gives his salary as the only means of getting money, and then it goes to the liabilities, which are all debts about loans, credit card debt, car loans, stuff like that. And then these stuffs turn out to become expenses, and then the money is out of the system. And this is the cash flow pattern of a rich person. You can see that the rich people, um, they get income through assets. That's what I can tell. They also have expenses, but they have more assets which bring them money. I bet we all understand. It doesn't matter, as you said before, it does not really matter about the amount of money or digits. What matters it is the story, because with time the digits build up and becomes unlimited. Even if even if one of your assets generates you um let's say $30 a month, if that is one, it doesn't matter what's the digit. What matters is the story. So I bet we understand. So this is a little bit of maths. Um, if you're listening to this, tell me your ideas. What you think of it. Right? All these diagrams, I'll repeat, all these diagrams are obviously oversimplified. Everyone has living expenses, the need for food, shelter, and clothing. The diagrams show the flow of cash through a poor, middle class, and a wealthy person's life. It is the cash flow that tells the story of how a person handles their money. The reason I started with the story of the richest man in America is to illustrate the flaw in believing that money will solve all the problems. That is why I cringe whenever I hear people asking me how to get rich quicker or they should start. I often hear, I'm in debt, so I need to make more money. But more money will often not solve not solve the problem. In fact, it may compound the problem. Money often makes obvious our tragic human flaws, putting a spotlight on what we don't know. Okay, that is why all too often a person who comes into a sudden windfall of cash, let's say an inheritance, a pay raise, or lottery wins, soon returns to the same financial mess, if not worse, than the mess they were in before. Money only accentuates the cash flow pattern. running in your head. Okay, so it's all about the cash flow, the way cash flows. It's all about the system. Doesn't matter how much money you have, as long as you're operating into some certain system, man, you're gonna get poor someday. Uh, that is why all too often a person who comes into a sudden windfall of cash, let's say an inheritance, a pay raise, or lottery wins, soon returns to the same financial mess, if not worse, than the mess they were in before. Money only accentuates the cash flow pattern running in your head. If your pattern is to spend everything you get, most likely an increase in cash will just result in an increase in spending. Thus, the saying, "a fool and his money is one big party." Damn. Cash flow tells the story of how a person handles money. I have said many times that we go to school to gain scholastic and professional skills, but both of which are important. We learn to make money with our professional skills. In 1960, when I was in high school, if someone did well academically, people assumed this bright student would go on to be a medical doctor because it was a professional with the promise of the greatest financial reward. Today, doctors, fa- doctors face financial challenges. I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy insurance companies taking control of the business, managed managed healthcare, government intervention, and malpractice suits. Today, kids want to be famous athletes, movie stars, rock stars, beauty queens, or CEOs because that is where the fame, money, and prestige are. That is the reason it is so hard to motivate kids in school today. They know that professional success is no longer solely linked to academic success, or as it once was, because students leave school without financial skills. Millions of educated people pursue their profession successfully, but later find themselves struggling financially. They work harder but don't get ahead. What I miss from their education is not how to make money, but how to manage money. It is called financial aptitude. Apti- Financial aptitude. What you do with the money once you make it. What you do with the money once you make it. How to keep money from taking it from you. How to keep people from taking it from you. How to keep it longer, and how to make that money work hard for you. Most people don't understand why they struggle financially because they don't understand cash flow. A person can be highly educated, professionally successful, and financially literate. These people often work harder than they need to because they learned how to work hard but not how to have their money work for them. Okay, how the quest of financial dream turns into financial nightmare. The classic story of hardworking people was a set person recently married. The happy recently married. The happy, highly educated young couple moves into one of their cramped, cramped rented apartments. Immediately, they realize that they are saving money because two can live as cheaply as one. The apartment is cramped. They decide to save money to buy their dream home so they can have kids. They now have two incomes. They begin to focus on their careers. Their income begin to increase. As their income go up, the expenses go up as well. So when income goes up and the expenses goes up at the same time, whoa. The number of one expense of most people is taxes. Most people think it's income tax, but for most Americans, the highest tax is Social Security. As an employee, it appears as if it's Social Security tax combined with a Medicare tax rate is um medi with the Medicare tax rate is roughly 7.5%. That is really 15% since employer must match the Social Security amount. In essence, it is the money the employer can't pay you. On top of that, you'll have to pay income tax on the amount that deducted from your wages. For Social Security tax, income you never income you never received because it went directly to Social Security through withholding. Going back to the young people. Going back to the young people. As the result of the incomes increasing, they decide to buy the house of their dreams. Once in their house, they have a new tax called property tax. Damn. Then they buy a new car, new furniture, new appliances to match their new house. All of a sudden, they wake up and the liability column is full of mortgage, and credit card debt. Their liabilities goes up. Dang. They are now trapped in the rat race. Pretty soon, a baby comes along and they work harder. The process repeats itself. Higher incomes cause higher taxes, also called bracket creep. A credit card comes in the mall. They use it and max it out. A loan company calls and says their greatest asset, their home, has appreciated in value. Because the credit is so good, the company offers a bill consolidation loan and tells them the intelligent thing to do is to clear off high interest consumer debt by paying off the credit card. And besides, interest on the home is a tax deduction. They go for it and pay off those high interest credit cards. They breathe a sigh of relief. Their credit cards are paid off. They have now folded their consumer debt into their home mortgage. Their payment go down because they extend their debt over 30 years. It is the smart thing to do. The neighbor calls to invite them to the shopping. The Memorial Day sale is on. They promise themselves they will just window shop, but they take a credit card just in case. I run into these young people all the time. Their names change, but the financial dilemma is the same. They come to me one of my talks to e- to they come to one of my talks to hear what I have to say. They ask me, "Can you tell us how to make more money?" They don't understand that their trouble is really how they choose to spend the money they do have. It is caused by financial illiteracy and not understanding the difference between the assets and the liability. More money seldom solves someone's money problems. Intelligence solves the problems. There is a saying, A friend of mine says over and over to people in debt, if you find you have dug yourself into a hole, stop digging. As a child, my dad often in the Japanese told us that the Japanese were aware of three powers: the power of the sword, jewel, and mirror. The sword symbolizes power of weapons. America spent trillions of dollars on weapons, and because of this is a powerful military presence in the world. The jewel symbolizes the power of money. There is some degree of truth to the saying, remember the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. Hmm? The mirror symbolizes the power of self-knowledge. This knowledge, according to the Japanese legend, has the most treasured of the was the most treasured of the three. All too often, the poor and the middle class allow the power of money to control them by simply getting up and working harder, failing to ask themselves if what they do actually makes sense. They shoot themselves in the foot as they leave the work every morning. By not fully understanding money, the vast majority of people allow its awesome power to control them. If they used the power of the mirror, they would have asked themselves, does this actually make sense? All too often, instead of trusting their inner wisdom, that that genius inside, that genius inside, most people follow the crowd. They do things because everybody else does them. They conform rather than question. Often, they mindlessly repeat what they have been told. Diversify. Your home is an asset. Your home is your biggest investment. You get a tax. You take. You get a tax. You take. You get a tax break for going into greater debt. Get a safe job. Don't make mistakes. Don't take risks. Uh, it is said that fear of public speaking is far greater than death. Yes, true. This is true for most people. According to psychiatrists, the fear of public speaking is caused by the fear of ostracism, the fear of standing out, the fear of criticism, the fear of ridicule, the fear of being an outcast. The fear of being different prevents people from seeking new ways to solve their problems. That is why my educated dad said the Japanese value the power of the mirror the most, for it is the only when we look into it that we find truth. Fear is the main reason that people say play it safe. That goes for anything, be it in sports, relationship, careers, or money. A person can be highly educated, professionally successful, and financially literate. Let's proceed. It is the same fear of ostracism that causes people to conform to and not question commonly accepted opinions or popular trends. Your home is an asset. Get a bill consolidation loan and get out of debt. Work harder. It's a promotion. Someday I'll be a vice president. Save money. When I get a raise, I'll buy a big house. Mutual mutual funds. Save. Many financial problems are caused by trying to keep up with the Joneses. Occasionally, we all need to look in the mirror and be true to our inner wisdom. rather than our fears. By the time Mike and I were 16 years old, we began to have problems in school. We were not bad kids, we just began to separate from the crowd. We worked for Mike's dad after school and on weekends. Mike and I often spent hours after work just sitting at the table with his dad while he held meetings with his bankers, attorneys, um, accountants, brokers, investors, managers, and employees. He was a man who had left school at 13, who was now directing employees. Here was a man um, who was now directing, instructing, ordering, and asking questions of educated people. They came at this beck and call and cringed when he didn't approve of them. Here was a man who had not gone along with the crowd. He was a man who did his own thinking and detested the words. We have to do it this way because that's the way everyone else does it. He also hated the word I can't. If you wanted him to do something, just say, I don't think you can do it. Okay, I understood. So if you wanted him to do something, you actually have to tell him that you cannot do it because he hates the word can't. Okay, nice. Mike and I learned more sitting in on his meetings than we did in our years of school, college included. Mike's dad was not book smart, but he was financially educated and successful as a result. He told us over and over again, an intelligent person hires people who are more intelligent than he is. So Mike and I had the benefit of spending hours listening to and learning from intelligent people. But because of this, Mike and I couldn't go along with the standard dogma our teachers preached, and that caused problems. Whenever the teacher said, if you don't get good grades, you won't do well in real world, Mike and I just raised our eyebrows when we were told to follow set procedures and not deviate from the rules. We could see how school discouraged creativity. We started to understand why our rich dad told us that schools were designed to produce good employees instead of employers. Occasionally, Mike and I would ask our teachers how how what we studied was applicable in real world, or we never studied money and how it worked to the what is this? My God. The further question, I don't know. To the later question, we often got the answer that money was not important, that if we excelled in our education, the money would follow. The money we knew about the power, with the money we knew about the power, the more we knew about the power of money, the more distant we grew from the teachers and classmates. My highly educated dad never pressured me about my grades, but we did begin to argue about money. By the time I was 16, I probably had a far better foundation with money than both my parents. I could keep books. I listened to tax accountants, corporate attorneys, bankers, real estate brokers, investors, and so forth. By contrast, my dad talked to other teachers. One day, my dad told me that our home was his greatest investment. A not too pleasant argument took place when I showed him why I thought house was not good investment. Let's see. Rich dad says that a home or a house is a liability. Poor dad says it's an investment. Alright, and this is not from reading. I'll explain it myself how I just understood. Uh, what's going on? Okay, sorry guys. A mess actually occurred there. Um, alright, so I will explain this myself from my understanding. Actually, when you have home, there are taxes, and we all know it. When you have your own mansion, or I can say your own house or a real estate, I might say there are taxes, and there is nothing that, and that actually the house that you actually have doesn't generate you any money. It's like you keep on paying stuff out of nowhere. It's similar from paying debts. So of course, actually, so well, give me a sec. I'm coming back. All right, distractions. Yep. So I'm saying a house is similar from paying to debts. Um, you you borrow money from the bank, and when you return it, there is some profit. There is some additional money that you have to return. The money comes from nowhere, but it comes out of your pocket, right? It's like there is no reason why you have to pay that. Like, but the debt comes out of nowhere, but it actually comes from your pocket. So it's similar to this. When you have a home, you get to pay you get to pay for debts, but you get to pay for the taxes, and similarly the money comes out of your pocket, and there is no other means that can generate you money except for from your work. So it's pretty much like a liability. So the rich dad thinks a house is a liability, but the poor dad thinks it's an asset, so he keeps paying for it. See, type shit. Alright, let's proceed. The above diagram illustrates the difference in perception between my rich dad and my poor dad. When it came to the houses, one dad thought this house was an asset, the other dad thought it was a liability. I remember when I drew the following diagram for my dad, showing him the direction and the cash flow. I also showed him the ancillary expenses that went along with owning the home. A bigger home meant bigger expenses. The cash flow kept going out through the expense column. We can see that income. So what are we talking about here? It's talking about the cash flow. Liabilities actually goes to expenses. Bring expenses, we can see that mortgage payment, property tax, insurance, maintenance, utilities, all these, and you still call your house a an asset. No, it's a liability. Today, people still challenge me on the idea of the house not being an asset. I know that for many people, it is their dream as well as the largest investment, and owning your own home is better than nothing. I simply I simply offer an alternate way of looking at this popular dogma. If my wife and I were to buy a bigger, flashier house, we realize it wouldn't be an asset. It will be a liability since it will take money out of our pocket Before even this dude explained this, I had it in mind already. So there's an argument I put forth. I really don't expect most people to agree with it because your home is an emotional thing. When it comes to money, high emotions tend to lower financial intelligence. It's one thing. High emotions tend to, like, you shouldn't include the emotions into financial stuff, guys. Don't do this. This is something that I learned it the hard way back in the days when I got myself into some betting. I mean, some gambling. Man, you shouldn't involve your emotions into anything related to money. Involve your intelligence, not emotions. Um, so where were we? Um, all right. Drink, realize. So here is the argument I put forth. I really don't expect most people to agree with it because your home is an emotional thing. And when it comes to money, high emotions tend to lower financial intelligence. I know from personal experience that money has a way of making every decision emotional. Alright. When it comes to horses, most people work all their lives paying for a home they never own. In other words, most people buy a new house every few years, each time incurring a new 30-year loan to pay off the previous one. Even though people receive a deduction for interest on mortgage payments, they pay for all their other expenses with after tax dollars. Even after they pay off their mortgage, alright, even after paying off the mortgage. My wife's parents were shocked when the property taxes on their home increased to $1,000 a month. This was after they had retired, so the increase put a strain on their retirement budget and they felt forced to move. Alright? Houses do not always go up in value. I have friends who owe $1 million for a home that today would sell for far less. Okay. The greatest losses of all are those from missed opportunities. If all your money is tied up in your house, then you may be forced to work harder because your money continues going out of the expense column instead of adding to the asset column. The classic middle class cash flow pattern. If a young if a young couple would put more money into the assets column early on, their later years will be more into the asset column early on, and their later years will be easier. I'll repeat this. If the young couple would put more money into the asset column early on, their later years will be easier. The assets would have grown and would be available to help cover expenses. All too often, a house only serves as a vehicle for incurring home equity loan to pay for mounting expenses. That's about right there. In summary, the end result in making a decision to own a house that is too expensive is a lie of searching an investment portfolio impacts an individual in an least in at least the following three ways. Alright, so he says that in summary, the end result of making decision to own a house that is too expensive is a lie or what? Is lay whatever. Of searching an investment portfolio impacts or in lie of starting an investment portfolio impacts an individual in at least the following three ways. One, loss of time, loss of time, during which other assets could have grown in value. Okay? Oh, yeah, it's true. Loss of additional capital, which could have been invested instead of paying for high maintenance expenses related directly to the home. Sure. Loss of education. Too often people count their homes and saving and retirement plans as they have in their asset as all they have in the asset column because they have no money to invest. They simply don't invest. This costs them investment experience. Most never become what the world calls a sophisticated investor. And the best investments are usually first sold to sophisticated investors who then turn around and sell them to the people playing it safe. All right, I get it. I wonder if I'm actually audible because it will be really scary if after I finish recording this video, this screen record, and then I come and realize that I'm not really audible really much, and it will be really scary. All right, I'm not saying don't buy a house. What I'm saying is that you should understand the difference between an asset and a liability. When I want a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate cash flow to pay for the house. You see? Not every expense should come out of your salary, dog. No. By educated that person of financial investment best demonstrates the life of someone caught in the rat race. His expenses match his income, alright? Never allowing him enough left over to invest in assets. As a result, his liabilities are larger than his assets. The following diagram on the left shows my poor dad's income investment. It is worth 1,000 words. It shows that his income and expenses are equal while his liabilities are larger than his assets. My rich dad's personal financial statement on the right reflects the results of a life dedicated to investing and minimizing assets. So let's say the psychology of these two dads, according to their financial statement, like the expenses that they use, that they have in a whole month, the income that they put in, the psychology of the cash flow, the flowing of the cash due to their own psychology. Starting with the poor dad's financial statement, we can see that expenses, his expenses and his income are all the same, like they match. That means if this fella, if this gentleman gets in f- $5,000 a month, he will also get out $5,000 a month. It doesn't matter in what way, in either food plus all the types of expenses, but at the end of the time, this gentleman would have spent the same amount he got in through the salary. For my rich dad, on the other side, his income up is bigger than his expenses. I don't mean it's bigger than his expenses, but the amount of money that he gets in is more than the amount that he gets it out. That means there is some amount that he saves. That's the logic that is happening here. If he gets in the same $5,000, we can see that the expenses are less than the $5,000 that he got into his bank account. That means he might have spent $3,000 and the other $2,000 is actually saved. And down here, we can see to my poor dad financial statement, assets are smaller than liabilities. That means all the debts that he has to pay are way bigger than the asset which gives him money, and he has only one asset. The only asset he has is his job, I can say, because that's the only thing that gives him money. But the subs which actually drain money out of his job are a lot. But to my rich dad, I can say liabilities. By the way, liabilities are liabilities are actually the same. What matters is the amount of assets. Um, Let me cut this short for a second. Actually, the reading of today has become really interesting. Let me cut this short a little bit. You know, I once had a talk with some rich person. He actually told me that the circle of spending money is actually the same. Even if you make as much money as Elon Musk, the only stuff you're gonna spend on yourselves is less than even 5% if you're making that much money. 1%, this man, let's say you cannot spend money more than, let's say, I don't really know in terms of dollars, but for example, here in Tanzania, you cannot spend money more than let's say 2 million Tanzanian shillings per month. You actually can't. Try so hard, you actually can't. For yourself, I mean, for yourself. Which 2 million Tanzanian shillings, I would say it's like $1,000, $1,000 in America. Or USD is quite worldwide. You can compare with US. You actually cannot spend more than $1,000 for yourself. So it's like that. It doesn't matter you receive salary of how much, but for yourself, the liability, the liability is actually the same. What matters is the assets. Do you have only one asset? Try to make it two. Try to make it three. Try to make it four. Try to make it five. Imagine having five reasons of you to earn money, five sources of you to earn money, even if it's like it generates you $30 a month. Like, it's not the same, guys. It's not the same. All right. I'm learning a lot, guys. I'm learning a lot as an 18 years old, guys, and I'm really feeling like I'm on a right path of life. All right. So proceed, and I think I'll end to this page. So it has been interesting. You guys tell me what you guys think. We proceed from the title. Why the rich get richer. A review. All right, this is one of the biggest questions I've had ever since I was really young. All right, I don't know if me speaking my thoughts while reading this book is actually destroying the taste of you listeners. I don't really know. So I'll need your comments down there. But I have to put this across. I have to put this across. I remember back in 2022. There was a time that I got so obsessed with this guy called Andrew Tate. I know he became like one of the most influential influential people in the social media world. And he always spoke about something called the Matrix. He says that this is the system where the rich get richer and poor get poorer. So this is a question where, like, when he says that, I never really understood entirely of what he means. Finally, I get across to a place where it actually tells why. It literally explains why the rich get richer. So let's dive into it. Why the rich get richer. A review of my dad's financial statement shows why the rich get richer. The asset column generates more than enough income to cover expenses. Um, the asset column generates more than enough income to cover expenses. Okay, with the balance reinvested into the asset column. Once again, you see the circle. You generate much more until there is somehow the other amount left, and then that amount is the one left is also reinvested to generate even more. That's really great. The asset column continues to grow, and therefore the income it produces grows with it. The result is that the rich get richer. So it's so simple. So rich people will continue being rich because they always make like they compound every amount that they, I know you understand what I'm saying. I know everyone who has reached this 1 hour listening to me is actually smart. Keep it up, brother.